Yes, it's actually something I just realized. You told us the level of acidity in your kind saliva, but not in the acid in your stomachs. Especially since we are unaware of how this hydrochloric acid translates to our language, it pointed out. So, I suppose my question is simply, how strong are these digestive enzymes? I didn't. Oh dang, I actually didn't. Burke realized, his face turning red with embarrassment as the professor saw his mistake. For you see, the pH level of stomach acids were not mentioned anywhere on his slides, as he had planned to inform everyone via the lecture. But it must have slipped his mind during all the excitement, alongside him not going into a ridiculous amount of detail. And of course, the one thing he forgot was also one of the most need-to-know facts for this topic. He took a moment to compose himself and spoke, trying not to show the discomfort in his voice. It would be a level between 1 and 2 pH, which would translate to between an 80 or 90 on your scale. And once again, the room instantly exploded into discussion. But this time no one was talking to each other, just to themselves. That's insanity. It's impossible. Surely, this human is jesting. What kind of insane food do they eat to justify this evolutionary path? I think it's all kind of neat. Feeling that he was losing the room for real this time, Burke once again glanced desperately at Bren, who finally snapped out of his stupor and moved in front of the human before snatching the microphone and banging on it. The same insane screeching noise from earlier washed over the room, and everyone thankfully stopped talking to let out pain noises of discomfort. Everyone, I am going to have to remind you that this is still a professional setting and will remain one, no matter what you are told. Bren shouted. I am having as much trouble taking this all in as the rest of you, but I am perfectly content with keeping quiet and waiting until the end. So if I can do that, then I politely request that all of my colleagues do the same. We are here to learn from our guest, not overwhelm him. Understand? Yes, we do, and I apologize for myself and the shameful behavior of my fellow researchers. I hope you can understand the reasoning for our reactions, Professor Burke, the blue-furred one said before leaning back in their chair. I am making an official decision for all of us. All questions will be saved for the end and will be asked in a polite and courteous way that is a better representation of this institution's manners. They nodded their head. Please continue, Professor, and excuse our childish outbursts. Apology accepted, Burke said, although he admitted he was slightly disappointed he wouldn't get to keep going. Bren handed him back the microphone, and he tightly gripped his clicker, his body shuddering slightly, as if he were in a blizzard. From this point forward, he did nothing but continue with the original plan, going from slide to slide and endlessly describing everything about the human body. Burke's brain once again switching to autopilot. Things were surprisingly quiet as he got back into the grind. And it took no more than 30 minutes for him to cover the rest of the body. And he didn't even bother pausing for questions before moving on to the final subject, culture, which was kinda just everything that didn't fit in the history section. This went by without a hitch as well, a full 60 seamless minutes of explaining different religions and traditions. And after a total of 5.5 hours of talking, the professor finally reached a completely blank slide and turned around. And there we have it, he said, outspreading his arms. Now, are there any questions that aren't about that specific bodily function? Not a single person raised their hands. Yeah, okay. Burke mumbled, having to admit that he was slightly disappointed with that. Alright, go ahead. However, to the human surprise, not many of the researchers actually raised their hands, appendages, whatever after he said this. And it took the blink of an eye for Burke to realize that most of the questions the room had were likely already answered with those first 3 from earlier. How is all this possible? Was already explained with evolution. The presentation, from their perspective, impossible internal biology. So, all that was really left were small fry questions. but, small as they were, answer them he did. How long has your species had this trait? For as long as we've existed. When you vomit, does the acid carry the risk of killing you? It can burn our throats and be slightly painful, but that's about it, unless done multiple times in a row. How is any of this? He already explained that, fool. And so on and so forth. Eventually, the Q&A came to an end after another 30 minutes, when at long last, it seemed the audience had ultimately been satiated, for now. Sensing the "for now" part just as much as Burke. Bran stepped forward and clapped his hands, all of his eyes now narrow slits. "You can leave now," he quickly whispered to Burke. "I'm just gonna finish this up here, and then we'll talk outside. Better get out, before they think of something else to interrogate you about." The human simply nodded at this advice, and then hastily vacated the stage, feeling the awestruck stares of every alien in the room following him. Gears and wheels were turning in their heads, Burke could see it. And all of them running and powering one simple machine, fueled by a single question that reverberated throughout the room. What the hell is wrong with human digestive systems? So, what's the general consensus? Did they believe me or not? It took some persuading, but they've seemed to accept it as the facts. As for your first question, well, I've got good news and bad news, Bran replied, the door closing behind him as he stood looming over Burke. The good news is, they're not going to try and perform a vivisection on any human. Ethics has won the day. Ah, thank God, Burke replied, breathing a heavy sigh of relief. Ever since you brought it up, I was scared to death of them demanding one of our own and… Oh, they still do, and that's the bad news, Bran interjected. The institution is going to request some human bodies as soon as they can for dissections. Not as bad as the alternative, but I will admit, I don't fully know your species' stance on such procedures. Yeah, should have seen that coming, Burke mumbled. Ah, don't worry, we're completely fine with it. I'm sure there will even be a few close-to-death volunteers who'll see it as an honor or whatever, he snorted. That's the only bad news there is. For now. Remember, since the news just dropped, we'll have to be patient when it comes to other reactions across the galaxy, especially concerning those of the public, Bran explained. Best case scenario, when humans finally integrate with the community, everyone will be wondering how you walk around without your gastric juices eating its way through your bodies, as none of them will have bothered to pay enough attention to actually learn the answer. They turned away and drew a breath. Worst case, you'll be avoided like a plague out of fear that you're all acid-spitting monsters. Bran let out a puff noise. So, make of that what you will. I'll see it as a plus, thanks, Burke chuckled. But changing topics towards the rest of the information I told them about, did any of that register? Or were they all too focused on that one single part to remember? I wouldn't concern myself with it. The entire thing was completely recorded. So, if you're worried about the information being lost to the community, I'm not. I just wanted to make sure that all the effort I put into this wasn't completely wasted, Burke explained. Believe me, I'm happy. I got everyone paying attention. But it was a single part of human biology out of thousands of years of history. And, well, everything about the rest of the body. He shook his head. I don't want my species to be recognizable for one trait only. They'll point us out on the street and yell, "Hey, there goes that thing that vomits acid at us," and other such offenses. I understand. My kind is well known for having twice as many eyes as any other sentient, and that's about it for our galactic contribution. But on that note, I would suggest to simply take what you can get, Bran explained before they put their hand on Burke's shoulder. You humans have something that makes you stand out from the crowd, and that is incredibly impressive with how many species there are out there. Even if it's just one thing, I would wear it like a badge for as long as you can. After all, I know enough about your kind to be aware that you love the spotlight, as I saw with you today. Can't dispute that. Burke admitted, tightly clenching his fists. One last question before we go though. I want to make sure of something. The way our bodies work, how unique our digestive system is compared to the rest, is that truly something special? Or will it just be seen as a mere quirk and not mentioned outside the scientific community? Oh, even if it's only in one regard, I guarantee everyone is going to be interested in your kind for having such a distinct biology. Again, something completely new to the community is very rare, and that's exactly what humanity possesses. But at the same time, even to me, he shuddered, it's horrifying. You're special, but you're horrifying. Burke couldn't help but actually laugh at this statement, wiping away a few tears as he put his notes away. I'll make sure to repeat those exact words to my superiors. And if your reaction to all this is that intense, then I can't wait to see the community's public consensus on the matter. He sighed happily. Just wait until they hear that every Earth animal digests food the exact same way, with some having acid much stronger than ours. What? The end. Author's name and the link to original text is in the description. Consider tapping the thumbs up and pressing the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video.